And truly, one's system of belief or their spiritual identification directly impacts on how they relate to others.
Yes, yes.
So, what were the elements of African culture that demonstrated our belief in democracy and true justice in our society?
The respect for the family and the assumption that elders had lived longer than others, therefore they were wiser in choices, and you created an atmosphere in which the elder automatically became wiser in making choices because you created an atmosphere where he couldn't be corrupted. By virtue of being an elder, he got his sandals, and he got his clothing, and he got his food, and he was a professional thinker.
Mm-hmm.
And when you had a difficulty, you went to him to think it out and to resolve it. He had lived through youth and middle age, and now he's eldership, so he had learned a lot of things. And yet he never charged you for advice, but you never charged him for the sandals and the food and the clothing either. So it was an exchange that brought about stability. You always had someone to turn to. The uncle plays a major role in African family structures. So that family structure, based on these values, there was no word for prostitution because no one had ever been one. Mm. And the idea was unthinkable. When you look at the structure of the society, if a lady is not married at a certain age, two families got together to see what could be done about it. Until they found a suitable man for her. Whether she found one for herself, they found one for her. So this was a period before the invention. I'm using the word advisor when I say invention of the romantic "I love you" marriage. So that's where we went wrong. That's where we began to have trouble, because the Africans' marriage was based on respect and bringing families together, and sometimes bringing villages together. So when two people married, you had a whole lot of cows and goats and thinking, because each side of the family put together enough means so that they could sustain themselves and make sure they had land. And they didn't have to petition. They didn't have to go into debt. They didn't have to take out any notes. And you belonged to that particular group, and you expected, by virtue of bringing children into being, and by virtue of your behavior, to enhance that group. And that group, by virtue of you belonging to it, protects you by making sure that you had the means of sustaining your family. If you didn't have enough goats, they would go to one family, you give them one goat, you give them until you got 10 goats, you know. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, that each family gonna give you 10 cows. So you begin the marriage with 20 cows.
Now, how did that affect our sense of justice and fairness towards
it? The sense of justice, as much as it is understood that a human being has a right to live, has a right to have the things that sustain a good life, to keep the human being from begging for those human materials that makes human life livable and basically comfortable. There was no great riches, but there was no poverty at all. If there was poverty at all, then that poverty was shared by the whole group, as riches were shared by the whole group. Now, they already had what Karl Marx was advocating, a classless society.
Is what Dr. Chancellor Williams, peace be upon him, refers to as the African constitutional system.
Yeah.
Everybody's needs was looked after.
Each according to his needs.